The white egg sat alone in the corner of the hatching chamber, and every dragon who passed it looked away. The elder called Granite stood before the council, his wings folded tight against his scaled body. His voice carried weight through the cavern when he spoke. 3 white eggs have appeared in our history. 3 times our people suffered plague, famine, and death. The pale ones bring nothing but ruin. The mother dragon named River trembled near the entrance. Her green scales caught the light from the glowing crystals that lined the walls. She had laid 7 eggs this season, and 6 of them showed the proper bronze and copper colors of healthy hatchlings. But the 7th egg gleamed like fresh snow, and it filled her with a fear she could not name. The old texts are clear, Granite continued. When the cursed color appears, we must act quickly. The hatchling cannot remain among us. River wanted to speak, wanted to argue that perhaps the old ways were wrong, but her throat closed with terror. Every dragon in the cavern remembered the stories. The white one who appeared 200 years ago and how sickness swept through the colony within a moon cycle. The white one before that and how the great cave collapsed, killing dozens. The texts went back thousands of years, and the pattern never changed. White scales meant death would follow. The egg began to crack. The sound echoed through the chamber like breaking stone. Every dragon stepped back except River, who remained frozen in place. A small claw pushed through the shell, pale as winter frost. Then another crack, and a tiny snout emerged, white as pearls with eyes that shimmered like ice catching sunlight. The hatchling pulled itself free and stood on wobbling legs. It looked around the chamber with innocent curiosity, making small chirping sounds that should have melted any parent's heart. Instead, the gathered dragons backed away further, some covering their eyes as if the sight itself carried poison. "Take it to the dead valleys," Granite ordered. His voice held no anger, only grim certainty. "Before nightfall, we cannot risk another disaster." 2 guards approached, their faces showing disgust and pity mixed together. They scooped up the hatchling, who cried out for its mother. River took 1 step forward, then stopped. Her maternal instincts screamed at her to fight, to protect her child. But thousands of years of tradition and fear proved stronger. She turned her head away as the guards carried her baby toward the cave entrance. The hatchling cried all the way through the tunnels. Its small voice bounced off stone walls that had witnessed this same tragedy, repeated across countless generations. The guards flew in silence, carrying their burden toward the barren wasteland that lay 3 valleys away from the colony. The dead valleys earned their name through stark truth. Nothing grew on the gray rocks. No water flowed through the dried riverbeds. The sun beat down without mercy during the day, and at night the temperature dropped until frost formed on the stones. It was a place where life went to end, and now it would be home to the newest cursed one. The guards set the hatchling down in a small canyon where rocks provided some shelter from the wind. They did not speak any words of comfort or farewell. They simply turned and flew back toward the mountains, leaving the small white dragon alone in the wasteland. The hatchling called after them until its voice grew hoarse. It did not understand why the world suddenly felt so big and empty. It did not know about ancient curses or historical disasters. It only knew that it was hungry, cold, and terribly alone. 3 days passed in the dead valleys. The hatchling learned to tuck itself between rocks when the sun grew too hot. It learned to lick morning dew from stones before the heat evaporated every trace of moisture. It tried to hunt the tiny insects that somehow survived in this harsh place, but its young body lacked the coordination to catch anything. By the 3rd evening, the hatchling could barely lift its head. Its white scales had dulled to gray with dust and exhaustion. It lay curled in a ball between 2 boulders, no longer crying, no longer moving much at all. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and purple, and the small dragon closed its eyes. Then a new sound broke the silence. A mechanical hum, low and steady, growing louder. The hatchling's eyes opened slightly. It had never heard anything like this before. The sound came from something moving across the valley floor, kicking up small clouds of dust. A metal vehicle rolled to a stop 20 feet away. It had 6 large wheels and a rounded body that reflected the sunset colors. A door on the side hissed open, and a creature climbed out. The hatchling had never seen anything like this being before. It stood on 2 legs but had no scales, no wings, no tail. It wore strange coverings over its body and had a clear bubble over its head. The human named David took 3 steps toward the rocks and then froze. His scanner had detected a heat signature, something alive in this supposedly dead place. But he had not expected to find a dragon, and certainly not a white dragon, which his research had never mentioned existing. David crouched down slowly, making himself smaller and less threatening. He could see the small creature was dying. Its breathing came in shallow gasps, and its body showed the signs of severe dehydration and starvation. Every protocol he had ever learned said to observe but never interfere with alien wildlife. His hand moved to his radio to call the base. Then the hatchling looked directly at him. Their eyes met across the dusty ground, and David saw something that stopped him cold. He saw the same look his daughter had given him in the hospital, right before the illness took her. The look that said, "Please help me, I do not understand why this is happening." His hand moved away from the radio, and reached instead for his emergency supply pack. David's fingers trembled as he pulled out the water tube from his pack. The artificial intelligence in his suit immediately protested with a series of beeps and a calm female voice. "Warning, xenobiological contact protocol violation. Please step away from the life form and return to base." "Shut up, Alice," David whispered. He squeezed water onto his gloved finger and held it near the hatchling's mouth. The small dragon's tongue darted out weakly, licking at the moisture. Its eyes widened slightly, showing a spark of life that had been fading moments before. David provided more water, letting drops fall onto the hatchling's snout. The dragon drank desperately, making small sounds that might have been gratitude or simply relief. After a minute, David opened a packet of emergency nutrition gel. The stuff tasted like cardboard mixed with vitamins, but it contained everything a body needed to survive. He had no idea if dragon biology would accept it, but doing nothing guaranteed death. The hatchling sniffed the gel cautiously, then licked it. Its face scrunched up at the taste, but hunger won over preference. Within seconds, the packet was empty. David provided another, watching as color slowly returned to the dragon's scales. "Alice, scan the creature. I need to know what we're dealing with." Scanning. A blue light swept over the hatchling from the suit's wrist device. Species match confirmed. Draconis draconis, native to this planet. Age estimated at 4 standard days. Severe malnutrition and dehydration. However, Dr. Reynolds, I must remind you that contact with indigenous species violates 7 different research protocols and could result in immediate dismissal. David looked at the hatchling, who was now strong enough to lift its head fully. The dragon gazed at him with intelligence that seemed far beyond 4 days of life. Those eyes held awareness, curiosity, and something that looked remarkably like hope. "Note in my log," David said, "I am choosing to violate protocol. My reasoning is that leaving a sentient creature to die when I have the means to help would violate a higher principle than any research regulation. Let Earth Command fire me if they want." "Noted, transmitting report to base now." "Belay that," David snapped, but the AI had already sent the message. Within 30 seconds, his radio crackled to life. "David, this is Rita. What the hell are you doing out there?" Rita Chen ran the technology division at their small research outpost. David had worked with her for 6 months, and she had become something close to a friend in the isolation of this alien world. "I found a baby dragon dying in the rocks," David said simply. "I'm not leaving it." "David, the protocols exist for good reasons. We don't know what diseases it might carry, what its species might do if they find out we interfered, or how Earth will react to this. I know all that. David pulled out a thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped it carefully around the shivering hatchling. But I also know what I saw in a hospital room 3 years ago. I know what it feels like to watch something innocent die while you stand by and do nothing because the rules say you should. Silence stretched across the radio. Everyone at the base knew about David's daughter, how the experimental treatment had been denied because of regulatory delays, how he had held her hand while she faded away, following all the proper procedures that led nowhere good. "How long until the review board arrives if you report this?" David asked. "2 weeks minimum," Rita answered. "Probably longer." "Then I've got 2 weeks to keep this little one alive. After that, we'll deal with whatever comes." "David, I'm required to report this to Director Hall." "I know. Do what you need to do, Rita." The radio went silent. David looked down at the hatchling, who had managed to stand on shaky legs. The dragon was barely 2 feet long from nose to tail, with wings that seemed too small to ever support flight. Its white scales caught the last rays of sunset, making it look like a creature made from moonlight. "You need a name," David said softly. "Can't just keep calling you hatchling." He thought for a moment, watching how the dragon's scales seemed to shimmer with a cold inner light. "How about Frost? You look like winter made alive." The dragon tilted its head at the sound, then made a small chirping noise that might have been approval. David smiled for the first time in longer than he could remember. He pulled out his tent pack and began setting up a shelter. The temperature would drop below freezing soon, and Frost needed warmth and protection. As David worked, Frost watched his every movement with intense focus. When David drove a stake into the ground, Frost came closer to examine it. When David unfolded the tent, Frost chirped with what sounded like fascination. The dragon showed intelligence that went beyond animal instinct. It was learning, processing, understanding. By the time 2 moons rose above the valley, David had established a basic camp. His rover provided power for heating and lights. The tent gave them shelter from the wind. He had enough supplies for 3 days if he rationed carefully, maybe 4 if he went hungry himself. Frost curled up on the thermal blanket inside the tent, finally warm and fed for the first time since hatching. The dragon's eyes drooped with exhaustion, but it fought sleep, seemingly afraid that if it closed its eyes, the helpful alien might disappear. David sat beside the dragon and gently ran his hand over those strange white scales. They felt smooth and cool, like touching polished stone pulled from a river. Frost's breathing slowed, the fear gradually leaving its small body. After several minutes, the dragon finally surrendered to sleep. David activated his personal log recorder. His voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "Day 1 with the dragon I'm calling Frost. I've broken every rule I swore to follow as a scientist. I should feel guilty, but I don't. There's something about this creature that defies explanation. The way it looks at me, the way it responds. This isn't just an animal. This is a person, and people don't deserve to die alone in the wasteland because of superstition or protocol." He paused, watching Frost sleep peacefully. "Tomorrow I'll figure out what comes next. Tonight, at least one innocent being in this universe will sleep safe and warm. That has to count for something." 2 weeks transformed everything. Frost had grown from a barely surviving hatchling into a dragon the size of a large dog. The creature's appetite amazed David, who had been forced to call Rita 3 times for supply drops. But the growth wasn't just physical. Frost's mind developed at a pace that shattered every assumption David had about dragon intelligence. On day 5, Frost learned to respond to basic commands. Sit, stay, come. By day 8, the dragon understood the concept of not touching David's equipment without permission. By day 12, Frost was solving simple puzzles that David created, moving objects to reach treats, understanding cause and effect with frightening clarity. But the most remarkable discovery happened on day 9. David had been taking geological readings when he noticed something impossible. His thermal scanner showed Frost's body temperature fluctuating by 30 degrees within seconds. The dragon's white scales shifted from cool to warm and back again, matching the temperature of the surrounding rocks almost perfectly. "This is incredible," David muttered, recording the phenomenon. "Natural thermal camouflage. I've never seen anything like it in any species." Frost seemed pleased by David's excitement, performing the color shift repeatedly, as if showing off a newly discovered talent. When the dragon matched the exact temperature of a boulder, it became nearly invisible to thermal scanning. Only movement gave away its position. David sent his findings to Rita, who responded with equal fascination and concern. "David, this data is revolutionary, but you need to know that Director Hall contacted Earth Command. They're sending an evaluation team, but that's not the immediate problem. We've intercepted Dragon communications. They've spotted your rover on their patrol routes. They know something unusual is happening in the Dead Valleys." David read the message twice, his stomach tightening. He looked at Frost, who was currently attempting to catch a small lizard that had wandered into their camp. The dragon pounced with terrible aim, tumbling snout over tail, then looking at David as if asking why hunting was so difficult. "They're coming, aren't they?" David said to the empty air. "They're going to want to finish what they started." That evening, David sat with Frost under the stars. The dragon had learned to enjoy these quiet moments, curling up against David's side while he pointed out Earth constellations and told stories. Frost couldn't understand the words, but the tone seemed to comfort the dragon. "I need to teach you something important," David said, his voice serious. He stood and walked 20 feet away. "Frost, hide." The dragon looked confused. David repeated the command several times, using hand gestures. Finally, understanding clicked behind those intelligent eyes. Frost's scales shifted temperature, and the dragon pressed against a rock formation, becoming nearly invisible even to David's eyes. "Good, very good." David felt his throat tighten. "If other dragons come, Frost, you hide. You understand? Hide and stay quiet." They practiced the command until well past midnight. Frost learned to find hiding spots quickly, to suppress even breathing sounds, to remain motionless for long periods. The dragon seemed to sense David's fear, and that awareness made Frost more focused on the training. On the 16th day, David's scanner picked up multiple heat signatures approaching from the mountain range. Large signatures, dragon-sized. He counted 20 distinct readings, and they were heading directly toward his camp. "Rita, I need you to listen carefully," David spoke into his radio while pulling Frost toward the best hiding spot he'd prepared. "If something happens to me, make sure Earth Command knows about Frost. Make sure they understand that these dragons are intelligent, probably more so than we realized. And make sure someone knows that the White One isn't dangerous. Whatever superstition these dragons believe, it's wrong. David, we're coming to extract you. Hold on for 20 minutes. You won't make it in time. Just promise me about Frost." "I promise, but David, don't do anything stupid." He smiled grimly, too late for that advice. He turned to Frost, who was watching him with those unsettling, intelligent eyes. "Remember what I taught you. Hide. Stay hidden no matter what happens. Please, Frost." The dragon made a low sound, almost like a whimper. David had never heard that noise before. He reached out and touched Frost's snout one last time, then firmly pushed the dragon toward the hiding spot between two boulders where thermal camouflage would work best. Frost reluctantly moved into position, scales already shifting to match the rock temperature. Within seconds, the dragon disappeared from sight. Only David knew it was there. The 20 dragons landed in a circle around David's camp. They moved with military precision, cutting off all escape routes. These weren't random scouts. This was a planned operation. The largest dragon, with scales the color of granite and scars across his chest, stepped forward. He wore some kind of translation device on a collar around his neck. "Human," the device crackled out in stilted English. "You harbor cursed one. Our laws demand death for both creature and one who protects it." David stood his ground, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "Your laws are based on fear, not facts. I'm a scientist. I study life. And that dragon you call cursed is the most remarkable creature I've ever encountered." "Remarkable in destruction," Granite replied. "White scale brings plague, brings death. History proves this truth." "History records correlation, not causation," David shot back. "Did you ever consider that white dragons appeared before disasters because they were trying to warn you? Did you examine what makes them different, or did you just kill them and call it prevention?" Several younger dragons exchanged glances. Granite's wings flared with anger. "You know nothing of our ways. Where is Cursed One?" "Gone. I sent it away when I saw you coming." "You lie. Thermal scans show heat signature near these rocks yesterday." David's mind raced. He stepped away from Frost's hiding spot, drawing attention toward himself. "Then your scans are picking up residual heat from my equipment. Or maybe your 1,000-year-old superstitions are making you see threats that aren't there." Granite roared, and the sound shook dust from the surrounding rocks. "You will surrender, Cursed One, now, or we remove you from this problem." Behind Granite, a younger dragon spoke quietly to another. David caught fragments through the translation device. Something about questioning the old ways. Something about no proof. But Granite's authority held firm, and the war party remained in position. Then everything changed. Frost's hiding spot erupted with a flash of color. The white dragon burst from hiding, placing itself directly between David and the war party. Frost had grown during the weeks with David, but still looked impossibly small compared to the adult dragons surrounding them. Yet the young dragon stood firm, wings spread in a defensive posture that spoke of pure determination. "No," David said sharply. "Frost, get back." But Frost ignored him, making sounds that might have been attempts at dragon speech. The young dragon's scales began shifting through colors rapidly, flashing from white to red to blue to yellow, creating patterns that seemed almost like language. Every adult dragon froze, staring at the display. "Impossible," Granite breathed, his translator carrying the shock in his voice. "The ancient signals. How does it know the ancient signals?" David's mind raced, analyzing what he was seeing. The color patterns weren't random. They followed a rhythm, a sequence. This was communication, something coded into dragon genetics so deeply that even Frost, abandoned as a hatchling, could access it instinctively. An older female dragon near the back of the war party stepped forward. Her scales showed bronze mixed with gray, the marks of advanced age. She wore multiple translator devices and what looked like ceremonial markings. "I am Scholar Ember," she said, her translator producing clearer English than Granite's. "I study ancient texts. What this young one displays we have not seen in 200 years. The warning colors, the danger signals." "What are you talking about?" David demanded. "You abandoned Frost to die. Now you're claiming it's showing you something important." Ember's large eyes fixed on Frost, and something like pain crossed her reptilian features. White dragons were not always feared. In oldest texts, before translations became corrupted, they were called guardians. They possessed ability to sense disasters before they happened. The color signals warned colonies to evacuate, to seek shelter, to prepare. "That's ridiculous," Granite snapped. "Scholar Ember, you spread dangerous ideas. White scales mean death. Every record shows this." "Every record shows white dragons appeared before death," Ember corrected carefully. "But what if we read the history wrong? What if they died trying to save us, not trying to destroy us?" David's scientific mind immediately grasped the implications. Confirmation bias. You associated white dragons with disaster because that's when they appeared, but you never asked why they appeared. You never studied what made them different. Frost continued the color display, and now David noticed something else. The patterns matched what his geological scanner had been reading all morning: underground pressure building, seismic instability, the kind of warnings that suggested something big was coming. Your scanners, David said urgently. Check your geological readings right now. Several dragons activated devices on their harnesses. Their faces changed as data appeared. Granite's wings trembled as he read his screen. Pressure building in 17 underground chambers, he said slowly. Projected eruption within 3 days. The old nesting grounds sit directly above the largest chamber. And Frost has been trying to tell you, David said. The color patterns match the scanner readings. Frost can sense what your instruments detect but does it naturally. That's why white dragons appeared before disasters. They were early warning systems trying to save your people. Lies to protect the Cursed One, Granite growled, but his voice lacked conviction. Ember moved closer to Frost, who stopped the color display and watched her cautiously. The old scholar lowered her head in a gesture that looked like respect or perhaps apology. 200 years ago, a white dragon named Crystal tried to reach the council chambers, Ember said quietly. The guards killed her before she could enter. 3 days later, plague swept through our colony. 1,000 dragons died. In Crystal's claws, she carried cave flowers that only grow near underground springs, flowers that our healers later discovered could cure the plague. The war party fell silent. Even Granite seemed shaken by this information. She was trying to bring you the cure, David said, and you killed her for it. We didn't know, a younger dragon said. The history says she attacked the guards. The history was written by those who killed her, Ember replied. I have spent 40 years studying original texts before they were edited. White dragons saved us dozens of times. We repaid them with fear and death. Frost made a soft sound and moved back toward David, who immediately placed a protective hand on the dragon's head. The young dragon leaned into the touch, seeking comfort from the only being who had ever shown kindness. So what happens now? David asked. You've learned the truth. Does that change anything, or do you still plan to kill an innocent creature because of tradition? Granite looked at Frost for a long moment. His scarred face showed an internal struggle playing out. My grandmother died in the plague 200 years ago. I was taught that Crystal the White One brought the sickness. I have carried hatred for white scales my entire life. And now, David pressed. Now I learn my grandmother died because we killed the one trying to save her. Granite's voice came out rough with emotion. Scholar Ember, you are certain of this history. I stake my reputation on it. The evidence exists in our oldest vaults. I have been trying to present it to the council for 10 years, but tradition held too strong. No one wanted to question what we have always believed. David felt a surge of hope. Then maybe it's time to question everything. Maybe it's time to stop punishing dragons for being born different. Maybe it's time to honor the guardians instead of hunting them. Granite turned to his war party. We will bring this to the council, full historical review. If Scholar Ember speaks truth, we have committed grave injustice. And Frost, David asked, what about this dragon right here right now? The old dragon's eyes met David's, and for the first time, David saw uncertainty instead of hostility. The young guardian stays with you until council decides. We will provide resources and protection. If our people have been wrong for 10 generations, we must face that truth and make amends. Frost's scales rippled with relief, settling back to their natural white. The dragon pressed closer to David, who felt his own tension beginning to ease. The archive chamber went deeper into the mountain than David had imagined possible. Granite led the way, his massive form barely fitting through passages carved by dragon claws thousands of years ago. Scholar Ember followed close behind, her eyes bright with vindication. David came next, with Frost walking pressed against his leg, nervous in these ancient tunnels. Rita and two other humans from the research base joined them, carrying scanning equipment and recording devices. This moment needed documentation from both species. Truth required witnesses. These chambers have not been opened in 300 years, Ember explained. Her voice echoed off crystal formations that glowed with soft blue light. After the last white dragon died, the council sealed all records related to them. They feared even the knowledge might bring curse. Fear is an excellent way to hide inconvenient truth, Rita observed, her scanner sweeping across cave walls covered in carved symbols. They reached a circular chamber where stone tablets lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Thousands of them, each covered in the flowing script of ancient dragon language. Ember moved to a section near the back, running her claws over specific tablets. Here, the original chronicle of Guardian Crystal. She lifted a heavy stone tablet and carried it to the center of the room where better light revealed the carvings. This tablet was written by Crystal's brother, dragon called Stone. He witnessed her death. David activated his translation device, the most advanced technology his team possessed. The AI struggled with the ancient dialect, but slowly words began forming on his screen. My sister Crystal discovered the sickness came from water, David read aloud. She found flowers near the deep springs that could cure the sick. She flew 3 days without rest to bring them to the council. The guards saw her white scales and attacked without question. She died still clutching the flowers, calling out that she had found salvation. By the time we understood, 1,000 had already fallen to the plague. Silence filled the chamber. Even Granite, who had been skeptical, could not deny written testimony from the victim's own brother. There's more, Ember said, pulling another tablet. This one from 600 years ago. Guardian Snow warned of the Great Collapse. He detected instability in the rock through temperature changes in his scales. He tried to evacuate the north chambers. The council declared him mad and locked him away. 2 days later, the collapse killed 300 dragons. Snow died still trapped in his cell. Rita's voice was quiet but firm. This isn't just 2 cases. David, look at this. She had been scanning tablets with her device. I'm finding references to white dragons across 15 different time periods. Every single one shows the same pattern. Guardian appears, tries to warn about disaster, gets killed or exiled. Disaster happens anyway. David felt anger rising in his chest. He looked at Frost, who was examining the tablets with clear interest, running small claws over the carved words as if trying to read them. This dragon, this innocent child, represented a line of heroes who had been slaughtered for trying to help. How many? David demanded. How many white dragons has your species killed? Granite lowered his head, a gesture of shame. According to records, 23 documented cases over 7,000 years, likely more that went unrecorded. 23 guardians, David said. 23 chances to save lives murdered by fear. A younger dragon named Sky, who had come with Granite's war party, spoke up. What about the disasters? If white dragons didn't cause them, why did so many happen after they appeared? Because the disasters were coming anyway, Rita explained, pulling up her geological data. This planet has a highly active core. Eruptions, earthquakes, and volcanic events occur every few decades. The white dragons didn't cause these events. They sensed them coming through their unique biology and tried to warn everyone. Ember pulled out another tablet, this one smaller and more worn. This is oldest reference we have, from before the fear began. It describes the first white dragon called Dawn. The text says, Dawn was blessed with scales that read the world's heartbeat. When danger approached, Dawn's scales would sing in colors. The colony learned to trust Dawn's warnings and prepared for storms, quakes, and fires. Dawn lived 100 years and saved countless lives. When Dawn died, the colony mourned for a full season. So what changed? David asked. How did Guardians go from heroes to curses? War, Granite said heavily. I have studied military history. 800 years ago, our species fought a civil war. Resources were scarce. Paranoia was high. A white dragon named Frost, ironically, tried to warn both sides that their battle took place over unstable ground. Neither side listened. Both accused Frost of being a spy for the enemy. They killed Frost together, the only thing both sides agreed on. 3 days later, the ground collapsed and killed warriors from both armies. But instead of realizing Frost tried to save them, Rita said, they blamed Frost for the deaths. Yes, after that, fear spread faster than truth. Each generation taught the next that white scales meant danger. The original meaning of guardian was lost. They became the cursed ones. David walked to where Frost sat examining a tablet showing drawings of a white dragon surrounded by grateful colony members. The young dragon looked up at him, and David could swear he saw understanding in those eyes. Frost knew this history belonged to every white dragon that came before. "We need to show this to your entire colony," David said to Granite. "Not just the council. Every dragon needs to see what really happened." "The council will resist," Granite warned. "Admitting wrong of this magnitude means questioning everything we believe." "Good," David said firmly. "Beliefs that lead to killing innocents should be questioned." Ember approached Frost carefully. The old scholar lowered her head until she was eye level with the young dragon. "Guardian Frost," she said formally, "on behalf of my people, I apologize for centuries of injustice. I apologize for the murder of your ancestors. I apologize that you were abandoned to die for the crime of being born different." Frost made a soft chirping sound and touched Ember's snout with one small claw. The gesture carried forgiveness that humans and dragons alike could recognize. David felt his eyes burning. This moment, this simple act of reconciliation, mattered more than all his years of research. The emergency sirens wailed through the dragon colony at dawn. David woke in the guest chamber they had given him, with Frost pressed against his side. The young dragon's scales were flashing colors rapidly, the warning patterns coming faster than David had ever seen. Granite burst through the entrance, his face showing controlled panic. "The eruption. It's happening now, not in 3 days. We must evacuate immediately." David grabbed his equipment and followed Granite into chaos. Dragons filled the air, flying in all directions, roaring instructions and questions. Hatchlings cried for parents. Elders struggled to carry precious items from their homes. The mountain itself groaned, a deep rumbling that shook dust from the ancient caves. "Where do we go?" a young mother dragon cried, clutching 2 bobbies to her chest. "The valleys below are in the eruption path. The mountains beyond are too far." Frost's scales suddenly shifted to a steady pattern, alternating between blue and green. The young dragon pulled away from David and flew toward the eastern tunnels, the ones that led away from the main colony. "Frost knows something," David said urgently. "We need to follow." "Follow a white dragon," an elder dragon sneered. "That's what brought this disaster." "No," Scholar Ember's voice rang out with authority. "That's what will save us from this disaster. The Guardian is showing us the path." Granite made a decision that would define his leadership. "Everyone, follow the white dragon, now." Some dragons hesitated, old fears dying hard. But when the mountain shook again and rocks began falling from the ceiling, survival instinct overcame superstition. The colony began moving, following Frost's small white form through tunnels most had forgotten existed. David ran alongside Rita, both humans struggling to keep pace with dragons built for flight. "Where is Frost taking them?" "My scanner shows an old lava tube system," Rita gasped. "It connects to a valley on the far side of the mountain range. If we can reach it before the eruption blocks the path." Frost flew ahead, scales still displaying the blue-green pattern. The young dragon would occasionally stop and wait for slower members of the colony to catch up, making sure no one got left behind. This wasn't just instinct. This was compassion. They traveled for 2 hours through winding tunnels that grew narrower and then wider again. Young Sky helped carry elderly dragons who couldn't fly well anymore. Human team members used their equipment to light the darkest passages. Dragons who had looked at Frost with fear days ago now followed the white dragon with desperate hope. Behind them, the mountain screamed. The sound of eruption echoed through the tunnels, a roar of molten rock and explosive force. Dragons at the rear of the evacuation reported that the main colony chambers had already filled with toxic gas and fire. Faster, Granite urged. We're almost through. Frost's pattern changed again, now showing urgent red mixed with the blue and green. The young dragon had found the exit but sensed danger there too. David pushed forward to see what Frost had discovered. The tunnel opened onto a beautiful valley, green and lush compared to the volcanic wasteland behind them. But between the tunnel and safety, a river of recent lava flow blocked the path. Not from this eruption, but from a smaller event weeks ago. The lava had cooled on top but still glowed red beneath the black crust. We can't cross that, a dragon said in despair. The heat will kill us. Frost studied the lava flow intently, scales shifting through colors rapidly as if processing information. Then the young dragon began walking along the edge of the flow, examining it carefully. After several minutes, Frost stopped at a specific point and began scraping at the cooled surface. "What is the Guardian doing?" Ember asked. David pulled out his thermal scanner and checked where Frost was digging. The temperature here is significantly lower. The lava must be thinner at this point, cooled faster. Frost can sense the thermal differences. Frost broke through the crust, revealing rock underneath that, while hot, was solid. The dragon had found a natural bridge where the lava had flowed over older rock formations. The heat was intense but not lethal, and the path was wide enough for dragons to cross single file. Unbelievable, Rita breathed. Frost just found the only safe crossing point. Granite stepped forward and touched his snout to Frost's head, a gesture of deep respect. "Guardian, you have our gratitude. Please lead us across." Frost took the lead, moving carefully across the hot stone. David followed immediately after, showing the other humans that the path was safe. Then came the dragons, one by one, the entire colony crossing from death into life. The last dragon, an elderly female barely able to fly, made it across just as the mountain behind them exploded. A column of fire and ash shot into the sky, visible even from their new valley. The sound was deafening, the heat intense even at this distance. If they had stayed even 10 minutes longer, the entire colony would have died. They gathered in the valley, over 3,000 dragons and 5 humans, watching their old home burn. Many wept, some raged at the loss, but all of them lived because they had followed a white dragon. River, Frost's mother, approached slowly. She had not spoken to her child since the abandonment. Now she stood before the small white dragon who had just saved her life, and shame crossed her features. "I failed you," River said simply. "I let fear override love. I abandoned my own child to death. I have no right to ask forgiveness." Frost looked at the mother who had rejected him, and David held his breath. He had explained abandonment to Frost, helped the young dragon understand what had happened. This moment belonged to them alone. Frost stepped forward and touched River's snout gently. The young dragon made a soft sound and River broke down, pulling her child close with her wings. Around them, dragons watched in silence as mother and child reunited. Granite raised his voice to address the colony. "From this day forward, white dragons will be honored as guardians. Any dragon who harms or threatens a white dragon will face the harshest punishment. And when the next white dragon is born, we will celebrate, not fear." The colony roared approval, and Frost's scales flashed bright with joy.